Welcome to chapter 16 of the book of 1 Samuel. The last chapter we see where Saul was disobedient, didn't follow with the instructions of attacking the Amalekites and destroying them all, but saved the good parts, the good things for himself and the people, blaming it on the people, so forth. And God has told Saul that he would take the kingdom from him. And now we go into the next section of the major entities of the Old Testament, David. And it begins, and the Lord, Kyrios, said to Samuel, until when do you mourn over Saul? And I treat him with contempt to not reign over Israel. It's interesting how Samuel apparently liked Saul and was hoping for the best, but he failed, and God held him in contempt. But Samuel apparently didn't, and God is coming against who? Not Saul here, but against Samuel. Now, today, God holding people in contempt could be a lot of people, and if God has told you, I suppose, warned you about somebody that does things completely against God, and God has contempt for this person, but yet you make friends with the person and so forth, then that would be a questionable relationship. Now, Jesus would have us to go and tell the sinners. He doesn't want us to only hang around with people that are religious or believers or so forth, but to tell other people. So that's not always the case. God may hold somebody in contempt, but he still wants the person to change, and he sends us to him. It can go either direction, really. But here we find out that he does hold Saul in contempt, tells Samuel to fill your horn with oil. And this is an animal horn, like generally a ram's horn, and they are pretty good size, and they could put oil inside. And craftsmen made caps, silver caps that would go over the tip so the oil wouldn't come out, sort of a container. And then he says, and come, I shall send you to Jesse unto Bethlehem, for I have seen among his sons to me for a king. And Jesse was of the tribe of Judah. And Samuel said, how should I go? For Saul shall hear and shall kill me. Apparently he had spies watching him. Didn't want to have Samuel put up another person for king instead of him, so he was guarding and watching Samuel. And the Lord said, Kyrios said, well, take in your hand a heifer of oxen, and you shall say, I come to sacrifice to the Lord. So pretending that it's a Levitical thing that he was doing for the people and sacrificing to the Lord. Now, he wasn't doing anything political that they would be able to see because of the way he was doing this. And you shall call Jesse and his sons unto the sacrifice, and I shall make known to you what you shall do. So, and you shall anoint to me whomever I should tell to you. And Samuel did all as much as the Lord said, and he came unto Bethlehem. So he gets his heifer and ties it and rope around its head, leads it on up to Bethlehem to be slain. And he startled the elders of the city in the meeting him. Now, Bethlehem, of course, we know from the New Testament as the birthplace of Jesus. But apparently, Jesus never told anybody he was from Bethlehem because everybody thought he was from Nazareth, which is in Galilee, in Capernaum. And so they often used the excuse that he could not be the Messiah, the Christos, because he wasn't from Judah and Benjamin in particular, Bethlehem in particular. But the main place where we find out from his birth in Bethlehem is in the book of Luke. So I believe that Luke, who didn't know Jesus, never walked with him, he went back to Israel and looked up these people for his book to be sent to the man that he wrote to in the book of Acts, Theophilus. And so he must have talked to Mary. Mary gave him the story of going to Bethlehem and the shepherds and the wise men and so forth, because I believe only Luke has that. And so now Bethlehem, this is where it starts. And they said, is your entrance for peace? Now, I don't know why they would say that, but why are you here? So maybe another way of their saying something like that in a question. And he said, peace, shalom, shalom. Is your entrance shalom? Shalom something. I come to sacrifice to the Lord. And you should be sanctified and recline with me today for the sacrifice. Now, sanctified, I'm not exactly sure how they did that, washing probably. And he sanctified Jesse and his sons and called them to the... I don't know why these links don't work when I get them here. He called them to the sacrifice. And it came to pass in their entering that he beheld Eliab, that was one of the sons of Jesse, and said, none other than his anointed is before the Lord. He must have been a good-looking man. And the Lord said to Samuel, you should not look upon his appearance, nor upon the manner of his greatness, for I treat him with contempt. Now, whether he really did treat him with contempt or he's just not allowing him to be what he wants, I'm not sure, but it says, for not as a man shall look, shall God see. Now, this Eliab might have been doing something that God didn't have contempt for him, that we don't know because it doesn't mention it. And then he says, for man shall see on the surface, but God shall see in the heart. Now, this is an interesting thing because of a lot of people can fool other people in appearing to be righteous and holy, and but yet their heart can be black. They have adultery or greed, envy, all sorts of things inside of them that don't appear on the surface, at least right away. And so God, he knows our heart. Now, that's quite a thing. I got a little bug here. Our hearts, God knows. So we may think that because people don't see that we're getting away with it, but we're not. God sees our heart, and that means that everything that we do, we have to realize that God sees and knows what we're doing, and we're sinning because of the flesh or because of circumstances or whatever. We need to know that God sees what we're doing. He knows our motives and so forth. It kind of puts the fear of God more in me when I think of that. And Jesse called Aminadab, another son, and he went by the face of Samuel. And he said, nor this one the Lord chose. It doesn't say treated him, held him with contempt, so maybe this Abinadab was a little better. And Jesse caused to pass by Shammah. And he said, nor in this one the Lord chose. Okay? And Jesse caused to pass by his 7 sons before Samuel. And Samuel said to Jesse, well, the Lord chose not among these. And Samuel said to Jesse, well, have the boys ceased? Is that it? And Jesse said, well, there's yet the lesser, the mikroteros. Teros makes the ER in Greek. Mikra mikro, might, small, lesser, less, turos. Behold, he tends among the flock. And Samuel said to Jesse, Send and bring him, for in no way shall we lie down to eat until he comes here. So the animal is being slaughtered and being cooked, but yet they can't eat till Jesse comes. Quite a long ordeal. And he sent and brought him. And he was ruddy, reddish, with beauty of eyes and good to the sight. Good-looking man. And they have the statue of David. Where is that? In Venice or someplace in Italy that Leonardo da Vinci did, with he's holding a staff, I believe, or something like that. And the Lord said to Samuel, Rise up, anoint him, for this is he. And Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him, poured it on his head in the midst of his brothers. And Spirit of the Lord sprang up upon David from that day and forward. Now the Spirit sprang up. There's another place down here. Let me go to it first, and then we'll go to the next subject. So now Spirit has jumped upon David. And Samuel rose up and went forth unto Ramah. He goes back to his town. And Spirit of the Lord left from Saul. And a ferocious spirit from the Lord smothered him. And the servants of Saul said to him, Behold, a ferocious spirit from the Lord smothers you. Spirit. Now here it is, pneuma. I've mentioned before, and especially in the New Testament, we have the agios pneuma, the Holy Spirit. We have the English word pneumatics, comes from that pneuma, pneumatics. It's wind power, air power, put under pressure, and it can lift buildings and run engines and so forth, air power. And it is always tied into a power. It's not something that is dormant. And so a ferocious spirit here. You have other spirits that are mentioned in the Bible. Many years ago when I first came to the Lord, I was doing a word study on spirit, and I had the Greek Bible by then, and I started with Genesis, and I didn't get very far, and there was a lot of interesting places, and I'll just read this list to you of the things that I beheld of the word pneuma. There is a spirit, the pneuma theou in Genesis 1:2. The pneuma mu, my spirit. So there's a spirit of God, and there's I have a spirit, you have a spirit, life spirit. The pneuma zoes, that would be the spirit of life, or the breath of life. A breath can also be a word synonym, and also a wind can be a synonym. They're all something of motion, of air. Well, not the Spirit of God, but these other spirits of earthly spirits, pneuma. And then there's the pneumatos tou theou, the Spirit of God. And then there's the spirit of wrath, the pneumatos themu, a spirit of wisdom in Exodus 28:3, pneumatos sophias, spirit of jealousy in Numbers 14:24, the pneuma eteron, another spirit, the God of the spirits, theos ton pneumaton, and we see that in the book of Revelations, the seven spirits before God. Then there's the pneuma kyriou, the Spirit of the Lord, in Joshua 6:34 and Judges 9:23, pneuma poniron, the evil spirit. So all these spirits, and I only got to Judges. People have written books on it. Agios pneuma is number one, the Holy Spirit. But here we're just talking about the word spirit. You can go through the word in number 4151 and do your own study in all the places, and take up where I left off in Judges 9:23. But anyway, a ferocious spirit. Here is a pony roan spirit. So they said, let speak indeed, O Lord, your bondman before you, and let them seek to our Lord a man knowing to strum with a lute. And it will be when the ferocious spirit be upon you by God, that he should strum by his lute, and it will be good to you. Now, a ferocious spirit by God. Well, I have had a ferocious spirit by God. I feel it when I'm sinning. If I do something I know is wrong, I shouldn't be doing it, then I can get really upset at myself. Why did I do that? And happened to me this morning, and blaming God or something, and becoming angry, and that spirit becomes ferocious within me. Now, that's not a good place to be. And now you can look for a person to play a guitar by you and listen to praise music, and probably helps a lot. Would calm you down, but I believe the best thing is obedience to God. And what are you obedient? How are you obedient to God? Is by doing his will, and his will is written down in his word, and by reading his word. That's the best solution that I have found for a ferocious spirit. I never listened to praise music. I went to a church where it was very prevalent, and I loved it. Loved singing with thousands of people. But I don't do it anymore. Just don't listen to any music, because I find myself with my heavy studies with the Greek and translating and working on a third edition, that all it does is draws me, it distracts me. So it continues and says, and Saul said to his servants, well, look indeed to me for a man rightly skilled for strumming, and bring him to me. And answered one of his servant lads, and said, behold, I've seen the son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, and he knows to strum, and the man is discerning, and a warrior, and wise in word, and the man is good to the sight, and the Lord is with him. Now, this seems to be an insertion story here, because it says he's a warrior, but he wasn't a warrior that I don't see until he slew Goliath, which is in the next chapter. So where exactly how this fits in, because it seems like when David comes to fight Goliath, Saul doesn't know who he is. And here we see David, but Saul didn't know him, but he's mentioned as being a warrior. Seems like the two are kind of the opposite, but could be two different stories. But anyway, Saul sent messengers to Jesse, saying, send out to me David, your son, the one among your flock. So he apparently was still in the flock. Now, why he might have mentioned he was a warrior because of other things that he did that we don't know. And Jesse took an ass, a donkey, and put upon it a homer of breads, and a leather bag of wine, and 1 kid of the goats, and sent them by hand of David his son to Saul. So he's going to the king, so he doesn't want to go empty, bring things to gratiate himself and David to the generosity of the king. And this leather bag of wine was how they stored wine in these leather bags. They call them bota bags, I believe, in Spain. And they're you see them some still. They're like a bladder, and the newer ones have a plastic top, and you can take it off and bend it over and put it in your mouth, and lift it up, and the wine goes out into your mouth. And you drink it, and then when you're done, you pull it down, and then lift this up and tie tie it off. Of course, I've never tried it. No, I did. I've had it years ago when it was popular back in the 60s with all the hippies carrying a leather wine bag on. Not all of them, but some of them had these bota bags. That's how I know them, from a bota bag. Here it's an ascone. So here he goes off with the kid and the wine and on the homer of breads to Saul. And David entered to Saul, and he stood before him, and loved him exceedingly. David always liked Saul and never wanted to kill him. He didn't kill him. He could have a couple of times, and we'll find out later. But Saul detested David, and he became to him the one lifting his weapons. Like Jonathan had the young man lifting his weapons, here Saul has David lifting his weapons. So when we get to the next chapter with Goliath, and it sounds like he didn't know him, so I don't know. It sounds like two stories. And Saul sent to Jesse, saying, let David indeed stand before me, for he found favor in my eyes. And it came to pass, in the being a ferocious spirit from God upon Saul, that David took the lute, the kineron, and he strummed by his hand like a guitar. And Saul was refreshed, and it was good to him, and the ferocious spirit abstained from him. Next chapter, Goliath. Find out what happens with David and Goliath. Famous story, one of the most famous stories probably in the Bible, at least in the Old Testament, if not probably maybe number one. We'll find out all about it in the next video seminar. Again, hope you join us. God bless.